Auston Matthews or Mitch Marner, which Maple Leaf will be crowned a Four Nations Face-Off champion? You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. What's happening, brother? It's finally here, Thursday, Championship Day at the Four Nations Face-Off.
It's here, and yeah, it's interesting because Thursday night is not kind of the night I think of like a championship final would be, but yeah, it's here and I can't wait for it, man.
Dude, it's gonna be a great game. The anticipation is building just as much as it did for game one. I mean, that was talked about since the tournament started. No one could, hardly wait to see Canada USA when it was in Montreal, and the game lived up to expectations and exceeded, I think, most people's expectations of what to expect. And it's gonna be really difficult to match or exceed what we saw in game number one. But when there's a championship on the line, and it's one final game, you never know what you're going to get. And I bet the Americans too, for how physical that they can be, now that it's on home ice in their own turf in Boston. Last time these two teams, got together and USA won a round robin game, they lost in the championship. Think back to 2010 in the Olympics. It's exactly what happened. They don't want that to happen again. And they haven't won a best-on-best tournament, Dave, since 1996. It's been a very, very long time since the Americans have been able to crown themselves as the best in the world. So a victory tonight would allow them to do it. So there's certainly going to be, very motivated to do so. And the man leading the charge, at least the guy with the C on the chest, is the guy who rocks the C on the chest in a Maple Leafs uniform, and that's Auston Matthews. And I want to get into this discussion with you here, Dave, because a Leafs player is going to make history tonight, right? A Leafs player is going to make history tonight. Not only are they going to be crowned as the first ever Four Nations Face-Off champion, maybe the only ever Four Nations Face-Off champion, but a Maple Leaf is going to win something. They're going to win something, and not just win something, but they're guaranteed to win a do-or-die game in Boston, Dave, in Boston.
Just the hockey guys providing just a sliver of hope for the Leafs to ever win something at TD Garden. Yeah, it's just like, it'll be very weird to see how that will kind of all play out, because the Leafs, especially when there's been a lot of discord about the two of them and how their tournaments have gone so far. And the championship, I've always said, you kind of have to look at the tournament as a whole. You can't just say, okay, yeah, they've had this type of tournament so far. Like, the championship game is where you leave it all, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of expecting that, right? Like, both players are going to leave it all on the ice. Like, Auston Matthews has kind of talked about, this game is one you've constantly been waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I understand that they haven't exactly been the faces of the tournament for their teams in a lot of ways. It's been a lot about, for the US, it's been the Tkachuk brothers. For Canada, it's been Crosby and McDavid, which, I mean, it's McKinnon's kind of expected, right, in a lot of ways. But this game for sure is going to define a player's legacy in a way, or even add to their legacy. I don't know if
it'll add to it. Definitely won't be a defining part. If they go on, let's say Canada wins, they go on to win the championship, and then Mitch Marner never actually, wins the Stanley Cup or never figures it out in the playoffs, he won't be defined as a winner because he won a Four Nations face-off.
Yeah.
But it'll be known like, he did win one. He did have he did win something. But it's interesting. We look at these two players in particular on the Maple Leafs, Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner. When it comes to their professional careers, neither have done a whole lot of winning. Obviously,
Yeah.
they've both won a single round of playoff action, meaningful playoff hockey in their careers. Like, to you, does one need this win more than the other? Like, who needs the win more, I guess? Would it benefit one player over the other to win this game tonight?
That's a good question. I would probably say Auston Matthews.
Yeah?
I would say so just because, he's going, like, there's always been, like, Connor McDavid has kind of achieved more in his career than Auston Matthews has, right? Now, I'm not saying if Auston Matthews wins this game, like, he's achieved more than Connor McDavid, because McDavid's been to a Stanley Cup final. But I think for Matthews himself, it's the realization that he can go up against a Connor McDavid and win a game like this, right? Like, it's always been like the two of them, right? McDavid was picked the year before him first overall. There was Matthews the year after. They've been kind of put together, right? In a lot of ways. Like, Mitch Marner doesn't have that other rival in a lot of ways.
He doesn't have that rival, but he's got the baggage of what he is, who he is. Like, so it is different, I guess. Like, the pressures are different. Like, I guess if you want to look at Auston Matthews and, getting a win, scoring a win over McDavid, could that mean something for his career? Possibly. I look at it differently. I don't necessarily look at it as a comparison to McDavid and why there's more pressure. Simply for me, it's the fact that he's wearing the seat for the Americans is why I think there's more pressure on him to win this game. Because look, Matthews has been fine. Like, he's been fine, right? He's been good. He hasn't been a detriment to the team. He's been okay. Give him like a B-, I guess, throughout the tournament. He's got no goals though. Like, he's only has 1 assist so far. So hasn't found the back of the net, hasn't necessarily led the charge in any game. And I think for that reason, it's like the guy's wearing a C. He sat out a game, in fact. So he's only had 2 games, I suppose, which is what it is. But he has a chance tonight. Like, he still is a premier player. He is, a top 5 player in the entire world in the NHL. So I think that Auston Matthews has an opportunity tonight to kind of change the narrative from like, it was a good tournament for him. Like, it was decent to, wow, Matthews really stepped up when it mattered. Like, that's what a captain is supposed to do. He played for the flag, played for the country, put the team on his back. I just don't think Mitch Marner's going to have that opportunity. Like, he's been relegated now to a checking role, and it's going to be McDavid, McKinnon, or Crosby. Maybe Kel McCarr can make a big play at some point, or a Braden Point. Like, he's so far down the list, in my opinion, when it comes to guys who I expect to really show up and even have an opportunity to show up tonight and generate and kind of lead the charge. Whereas for the Americans, I think they're going to be leaning a lot on Auston Matthews to come up big in this game. Again, the Tkachuks, that's been the story for USA so far, but both of them are pretty banged up. Like, Tkachuk left the Canada game with an injury, didn't play in the third period, and then you look at Brady Tkachuk, he left in the last game that they played when they took on Sweden, and they just. Brady wasn't at practice yesterday dealing with an illness. Tkachuk with that injury. Like, I just think that those two might not be as physical as they were in the game on Saturday. I could be wrong, but I think that it's going to be more reliant on an Auston Matthews. If Team USA is going to pull out the victory tonight, he's got to show up in a big way. So for that reason, I think there's more pressure on Matthews than there would be on Mitch Marner. But that being said, when it comes to the psyche of winning a big game and winning a championship and knowing, hey, this is what it takes to win, I think Marner, for a psyche perspective, might mean more for him. But I think Matthews, there's more pressure to get it done.
I mean, Canada, yeah, as you say, like Canada doesn't necessarily need Mitch Marner to have a good game in order to win. Like he's kind of been lower down on like the tiers of players that they are counting on. Yeah,
He's
for
in a
the
checking
US,
role now, not an offensive role. He's
yeah,
in a checking role, which he can excel in, and he can
yes,
definitely, come up big tonight with a big back check or a block shot, or he gets a steal and sends it up the like he can still factor in. It's just not going to be to the same degree that
no,
Matthews has a chance to.
no, like Matt, you're gonna be seeing a lot of Auston Matthews tonight, I think. Like especially and Matthews, as much as he hasn't really been an offensive threat, he has been a stout defensive player for the US.
Yep.
I don't think people really have really appreciated the things he has done defensively for the States. So, like, yeah, I think he'll have to take it to the next level is can he also do it at the other end of the ice for the US, because they're going to need him to do that, because even the last game I felt like there was a lot of he made a lot of good defensive plays, but he wasn't as much of a presence offensively. So I think that's if you're the US, that's hopefully where Auston Matthews will kind of excel. Now I also wonder how much does the soreness that he's dealing with also impact that as well, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it could. And Matthews did speak on the injury with the reporters yesterday after missing the game on Monday with upper body soreness, is what it was diagnosed as. And he said it was something new, which you don't love if you're a Maple Leafs fan to hear that there's a new injury creeping up in Auston Matthews' life, but did say that he's feeling a lot better today. So he had the chance to rest up, didn't get to play on Monday. He's been off since Saturday. Realistically, hasn't been, hasn't been physically engaged, I guess. He's been skating, taking part in practice yesterday, but he hasn't had, a full workload since Saturday against the Canadiens. So he should be healthy and should be ready to go tonight, and then he'll be hopefully ready to go for the Maple Leafs come Saturday when they host the Carolina Hurricanes and start the unofficial second half of the season. All right, well, we'll see what happens. I think both players are going to be motivated. We'll see which one comes out victorious. On the other side, let's dive into the game itself. Canada, USA. We'll give our prediction, and there was a massive moment for a Maple Leafs prospect last night. We'll tell you all about that also next on the Locked On Leafs podcast.
Today's show is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. They have perfect grab and go. It's a perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether you want to snack at your desk, on a road trip, or you just need a protein boost, they have great options that allow you to do all that. And if you love the cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Or you can get the ones with no shells. That makes it a little easier and a little less messy. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always here each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, with brand new episodes, free and available wherever you get a podcast, and also up on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Leafs, hit subscribe, and be prepared for Maple Leafs coverage all year round, 365. And a couple of Maple Leafs taking in the festivities tonight. Canada, USA, Mitch Marner versus Auston Matthews. One of them will be crowned a champion and finally win something in their professional careers. I was taking a look on Game Time, great sponsor of the Locked On Network, and trying to see if I wanted to go down to Boston for this game tonight, Dave. Canada, USA, Four Nations Face-Off Championship. How much would it cost me? What do you think the cheapest ticket currently on Game Time is right now for Canada USA tonight?
I'm gonna go in like the thousands.
Yeah. Yeah. It is $917 USD, which 917 USD to Canadian is $1,301.97. So $1,300 is the cheapest ticket you can find up in the bleeders at TD Garden to go and watch tonight's game. Holy moly. You thought tickets were expensive in Toronto for a Leaf game. $1,300 for bleeders to go watch this one.
I would really like to know. I don't know what the ticket prices were like for Montreal. I would be curious to know how much that would cost though if it was in a reverse situation.
If it was in
Where
Montreal,
if it was in Montreal tonight.
yeah, I mean, probably very expensive, regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it's quite a chunk of change. So, if anyone's got tickets to the game, man, lucky you. Have fun.
Yeah.
That's
If
the
you got
thing.
tickets ahead of time, make a
Yeah.
decision of do you want to watch the game live or do you want to make a little bank
What would you
potentially?
do, Dave? What would you do, Dave? Would you keep those tickets? You got a pair of tickets. Are you going with a friend, or are you selling those bad boys off and pocketing $2,600?
Yeah, if I had a chance to make that much money, I probably would have. Like
Might have
it's
to do it. And then go
yeah.
to a
Well,
bar.
now here's the thing. Now I also have to factor in if I was going to Boston, right, and all that.
Mhm.
So you have to factor in all the getting there, getting a hotel, and all that
Right.
stuff. Maybe it's just easier just to pocket the money and have a. You can do a lot of fun stuff with $2,600. That's for
You
sure.
could. What are your plans for the game tonight, buddy? Got any plans for it?
Probably watching it with a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to like a bar or like a sports bar to watch a game a game like this in a long time.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going out to watch the game. I think just gonna end up watching it like with the family. We're doing some family dinner tonight, so I think we're gonna roll it in from dinner into pregame into the game, and that's gonna be fun to watch it with the fam jam. Everyone's gonna be pretty stoked and excited for it, and it'll be a nice moment. I remember I watched 2010 with the family, so it's 15 years later. We're kind of doing the same thing. And it was almost 15 years to the day, actually, the golden goal. I think that was Feb 21 maybe was the date to the golden goal. I want to say so. Almost 15 years to the day since we saw Canada win gold over USA. That was on Canadian soil. Now it shifts over to American soil. The game's in Boston tonight. Really quickly, there are a couple lineup changes from the game on Saturday. So Canada, Cale Makar is in. That's a massive boost for the Canadians. Cale Makar will be in, which means Thomas Harley has to come out. And they're going back to Jordan Binnington again, which I think makes sense. They have to at this point. I don't think the first look at Aiden Hill, you want to be in the championship game. So Binnington, a chance to right some wrongs. He let in, a couple of softies throughout the tournament, but he'll have an opportunity to really step up in a do or die game in Boston. He's won those games before. When he won the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues, he had to go into Boston and win a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup final, and he did so. So I think they're hoping that he can channel that in tonight's game.
Yeah, no, I think like when you look at this game with no McAvoy, Makar in, and guys on the US are banged up, probably a little more banged up than Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Look, they play a very a lot of people say, they play a very tough style, aggressive style. They remind me a lot about like Florida the first time around when they played Vegas in the Stanley Cup final. They were a very tough checking team, winning a lot of close games. But eventually, you kind of have to pay the piper a little bit. Will you want to play that style?
Yeah.
it's going to cost you in a lot of ways, right? And so I think there's a little bit of that. I mean, we know that both teams have been kind of chirping against each other pretty good. Kachuk and Hagel, kind of not not the rivalry I was expecting, but you got the Florida rivalry there.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you're Canada, you're maybe feeling a little better knowing that you're probably a little bit healthier than the States are right now, and
Yeah.
you know exactly what adjustments you need to make after that Saturday game, which is why I said it. If the U.S. won, I liked Canada's chances better to win because they can make the adjustments. Now the U.S. can certainly make adjustments too, but Canada has more of a blueprint now of what they need to do.
100%. And the great Bob McKenzie always says, in a tournament like this, it's really tough to beat a good team twice. So, USA, they were unable to score the second victory in 2010. We'll see if they can do it tonight. But you mentioned the injuries and Charlie McAvoy, who played a massive role in establishing, that physicality from the back end, made some thundering hits on Connor McDavid, got a little physical with Sidney Crosby a little bit too. He is out, right? He's got a shoulder injury. He underwent a procedure due to an infection that came from it, and he is now week to week. So, Bruins fans not happy about that. But Charlie McAvoy will not be in this game, and I think that's a big loss for the Americans. And then you mentioned it, like I think you actually brought up a really good point about the Florida Panthers, and kind of that when they played Vegas, they were so good, and then they just didn't have it anymore. They were just, battered and beaten, and they just didn't have it come the Stanley Cup final. And yeah, could that be the case here? Did they leave too much on the line in Saturday's win, that they just came out of it so bruised up? Like Matthew Tkachuk hurt, gonna play, but he's going to play through something. Auston Matthews, same thing. Brady Tkachuk, same thing. Left the game against Sweden with an injury. Yes, they called it a precautionary reason as to why he left, but he's still battling through something, and he was suffering with an illness, which is why he wasn't at practice on a Wednesday. So even, not at 100% health-wise either. And they're not going to have Quinn Hughes either to replace Charlie McAvoy, I might add. Quinn Hughes was not medically cleared by the Canucks to go and play. Sounds like Brett Pesce and Tage Thompson are going to be on standby in case, a couple of players are unable to go. I guess there's, that illness kind of going through not just the room, but the whole tournament. You had a bunch of players missing some games with illness. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like with the guys banged up, how much will that impact and affect Team USA? Will they be able to play with that same relentlessness and physicality that was so successful for them in Game 1? It's a good question, and I'm excited to see to see how that gets answered and whether or not they will continue to play with that high level physicality and intensity. When you look at both sides, though, Dave, we'll take the Stars out of it, I suppose, because I think, that's the easy answer. But like sometimes in a championship game or in a game 7 of some kind, there's like an X factor and someone who, scores a big goal at a big moment. Like who can be the X factor in a game like this on both sides?
I think you look at like a guy like Brad Marchand for Canada,
especially in Boston.
Yeah, in Boston, like he's been he's a player that, I mean, you look at all the on ice clips of him, nothing really like he's very into the game. Things sometimes you may think he's getting a little bit off kilter or things are starting to throw him off his game, but that's just him. That's just him bringing his own intensity to the game. I think he's kind of got that swagger about him, and I really like him in a game like this. I even like a Brendan Hagel too. Like I think he's a very underrated player, right?
Yeah.
He's having such a good year in Tampa. Yeah, he's been again relegated to the third line. It's just not everyone can play that, the top line role, but he's another guy that I think can thrive in these situations just because of the style of game that he plays. For the US, it's a interesting because I do think that the U.S. I've always said that I've liked Canada's depth more than I've liked the U.S.'s depth.
Yeah.
In terms of having guys to be able to do that stuff. Like we already kind of saw Dylan Larkin kind of do that in the first game against Canada. Maybe Kyle Connor, if he's not in the top 6, like maybe he's a guy that
may not play. It was interesting. Yesterday in practice, Kyle Connor was used as like
he was the Brady
Brady
Tkachuk.
Tkachuk, and like sometimes if they're using him as a placeholder, you may not even end up playing. I look at a guy like JT Miller. JT Miller to me is someone who I think has an opportunity to kind of make a mark and score a big goal. He loves to, score in and around the net. I think JT Miller is someone I'd be kind of looking at as a possible player who can make an impact for the Americans.
Well, as long as he doesn't decide to try to pick a fight with Colton Parayko, I think he should be okay.
Yeah. That's a good point. You think we'll see a fight tonight?
I don't think we're going to see anything. In my opinion, I don't think we're going to see anything off the top, but I can see a fight tonight just because I think
like organically, like the game will just get like there'll be that.
I think it'll get chippy enough that somebody will drop the gloves.
Yeah, I think so too. Like at some point, the emotion's going to run high, and we'll see it happen. It won't be, staged 3 fights off the top again, but at some point, I do see it happening as well. Fun little stat here, Dave. Canada have 14 Stanley Cup winners on their roster. USA, just 3. So Canada knows how to win. They've got a lot of winners on their team. So whether or not that plays a role and plays a factor into tonight's game, I guess we'll see. But I did think that was an interesting little statistic. Final prediction. Who wins it? What's the score?
I'm sticking with my initial prediction. I think Canada's going to do it. And considering how this tournament has gone, I'm going to say it's going to be an overtime. I'm going to go 4-3 Canada in overtime.
Who scores the OT winner?
Put me down for a Connor McDavid OT winner.
Yeah, it's got to be, right?
It's like either McDavid or McKinnon.
Yeah, in my opinion. It's the passing of the torch. All tournament, I was on Team USA. I thought Team USA was going to win. Thought they were the better team, the better blue line, the better goaltender. And goaltending, I mean, Connor Hellebuyck can win this game, right? He stole the game on Saturday night, right? And he had 2.39 goals saved above expected. He stole that game. That being said, a lot has changed over the course of the tournament. I think the injuries have started to pile up. I think that the Americans might not be able to be as physical as they want to be. And I think with Canada getting Cale Makar back, I think it's a big boost. And no Charlie McAvoy. Like, it's just kind of switched, right? Like, you take away one of your better defensemen on USA, you add the best defenseman back to Canada. It was already a tight game, a 1-goal game pretty much. I think that we could see Canada come out on top. I think the best players will learn from Saturday's game and have a game plan to generate more offense, find a way to beat Connor Hellebuyck. And keep in mind, Connor Hellebuyck has never played well in the big game. He's always kind of, crumbled in the playoffs. This is a true playoff game. There was round robin for them, wasn't necessarily playoff games. This is a must win. Hellebuyck has not had a lot of success in must-win games. So is that going to be between the ears? Could that cost them? I think if they score an early goal and score a second goal in the first period, I think that could be detrimental to Connor Hellebuyck's psyche. So I think we could see it happen. I really do. I think this is a 4-2 final for Canada. 4-2. I think we see an empty netter. So I think it's 3-2. It's close. It's tight. And then we see an empty net goal to kind of seal the deal. And I think Sidney Crosby will end up being named tournament MVP. I think he's plus 500 currently on FanDuel. I think Sidney Crosby, he leads the tournament with 5 points, a goal, and 4 assists. I could see him, putting up a couple more points in this one, and he's just been a rock star. And I think this is the he's going to play for the Olympic team next year, but I think this is like the final tournament where like he can be looked at as the guy, and then it'll be McDavid's team next go around at the Olympics. I think him winning gold, winning a championship, getting tournament MVP, I think would just be a great storybook ending for this tournament. So those are kind of my final predictions here for tonight's game. It's going to be an absolute beauty. I can't wait for it. And 8 p.m. puck drop should be a lot of fun. All right, quickly on the other side, there was a massive, massive play made by a Maple Leafs prospect. It was making the rounds on Twitter last night. Let's show the play and talk a little bit about a couple of Maple Leafs prospects and how they're doing this season. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano, got Dave Morassutti with me here on the show. And, there's no NHL action, Dave, but there has been, junior hockey. There's been some American League hockey ongoing. And last night we had a clip go absolutely viral on Leafs Twitter. Maple Leafs first round pick from 2025. Defenseman Ben Danford laid an absolute banger of a hit on projected, top-ish pick Porter Martone in last night's game between the Oshawa Generals and the not the Mississauga Steelheads, they're now the Brampton Steelheads. And boy, oh boy, was this ever an absolute hit. I can pull it up for y'all. Oh, you got it? Perfect. So here's the hit for those who didn't see it. Watching the top right corner. Boom! Absolutely, like, I don't want to say murders the guy, but he kind of did, and then drops the mitts and lays a couple of massive haymakers, couple of big rights, and wins the fight. So a big old hit, and then he ends up winning a fight as well. Ben Danford, how do you do? Maple Leafs fans and Brad Treliving, I'm sure, loves to see that.
Yeah, it's kind of, I have obviously Ben Danford hasn't had like a massive season. I think maybe people are. I know I read somebody was writing like, I was ready to say how Ben Danford had kind of a quiet season, as I admit it might in this mid sentence. He absolutely destroys the guy with the hit, and like. This is, I always said Ben Danford's going to be a project type of prospect, right? He came in, he was a little bit undersized, and he's still not playing like a big offensive role right now in Oshawa. So it's going to take some time for him to kind of, I guess, move forward a bit as a prospect, right? Like, I still think he's got room to grow. He's 6'2", 194 pounds. Like, I think there's probably still a bit more for him, and like, he was always drafted as like a kind of a defensive guy anyways, and a mobile defenseman, right? Like, he wasn't seen as this big offensive player. So I think people had to maybe, temper expectations a little bit of what they expected from Ben Danford.
Well, I don't know how many people had high expectations. Like, the guy had 1 goal in his draft here. I mean, it's not like people thought that he was going to be the second coming of Kel McCarr. That being said, there was a lot of draft pundits that said they believed that there could be a little bit more from him offensively than just 1 goal. And he has increased that total to 5 goals this year in 51 games. He got 5 goals, 16 assists for 21 points. And it's worth noting that he's not on the power play at all for the Generals. So, he's not picking up much power play cookies to bump those numbers up. But hey, that's not what you want him to be. You want him to be a steady Eddie, right-handed defenseman who can hit just like that, big old thundering hits, and who can just be responsible in his own end. Like, maybe a future partner for a Morgan Riley, perhaps, would be something that the Leafs could definitely use, assuming Riley's going to be around for, the duration of his entire contract. Danford might be a projection to slot next to Morgan Riley at some point and play that physical defensive style game. But yeah, big time hit for Ben Danford. Nice to see. Looks like he's coming around quite nicely as one of the Maple Leafs top prospects. A couple other prospects to tell you about and how their seasons are going. Auston Cowan, obviously the Maple Leafs #1 prospect in the system. His point streak ended a couple of weeks ago, actually, Dave. I don't think we talked about it, but he had that point streak of 63 games in a row, 63 straight games extending from last season into this season where he had registered at least 1 point. And man, what an insane streak that is. Like, legitimately wild to hear a number like that. 63 straight games registering a point. This season, though, not quite as productive offensively as he was a year ago. 18 goals, 25 assists for 43 points in 33 games. To be honest, I haven't watched a lot of London. I haven't watched any London Knights hockey, to be completely fair. So I couldn't tell you if Auston Cowan has been playing better, if those numbers are deflated for whatever reason, if the play on the ice looks better than the numbers suggest. But Auston Cowan, in terms of like points per game, not having as stellar a season as he did a year ago.
Well, one development that I've also seen too is him playing a bit of center. He's played a few games as center too, which I wasn't expecting. Wasn't expecting to see Auston Cowan play center.
Wasn't he drafted as a center?
But he's been a winger most of his time in London, so that's why I wasn't too sure if that's exactly where he's supposed to be slotted. But yeah, I mean, like the point streak was good, was nice. I know that some people, there was a little bit of I guess some questioning if one of the points he got was valid because it was like a secondary assist and all that. But I also think that the world, he had to kind of, I think, bounce back a bit from that World Juniors where he wasn't kind of seen as as big of a threat for Canada as some would have expected. I don't know, but I think he's had a pretty good year. The streak was nice, but I'm gonna be kind of looking to him when it's like playoff time, and how does he maybe elevate his game more in those situations? I think that was his calling card last year. Is he kind of brought his best game when the stakes were higher.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on Auston Cowan and how things are going for him. Fraser Minton, he's got 10 points in 20 games in the AHL. He's got 4 points in 15 games in the NHL. Nikita Grabankin is in the American League. He's got 9 goals, 20 points through 33 games at his first full season in North America. Noah Chadwick having a pretty big year. The right-handed defenseman out in Lethbridge, 6'4", 215 pounds. Big boy guy that Tree Living has had an affinity for. He's got 11 goals, 34 assists, 45 points so far on the season. So Noah Chadwick, big body. He's producing now. He's the captain in Lethbridge. So, it's good to see Noah Chadwick, another, defenseman that looks like he could have an NHL future for the Maple Leafs. Big body, right-hand shot. Hey, maybe he could also at some point be a Morgan Riley partner, perhaps, or maybe anchor a third pair. So those are a couple of the key stats, I guess you could say, for some of the key prospects on the Toronto Maple Leafs. I do want to also point out one final thing here, because I don't think people really understand how good of a season one Matt Murray is having in the American Hockey League. 15 games, Dave. He's got a 168 goals against and a 934 save percentage through 15 games. Matt Murray's playing some good hockey, some good goaltending down in the American Hockey League. Now, he's not going to supplant either of the goaltenders in Toronto, because both Stolarz and Wall have been fantastic this season. But it seems like they've got themselves a capable third goalie that has seemed to found his game and has remained healthy all season. So that's at least a positive storyline you can look at down in the American Hockey League. All right. I think that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow to recap the championship game from tonight. Canada, USA, for the title in Boston, 8 p.m. puck drop. Go, Canada, go. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.